and welcome to our latest Matchday AMA. I'm Sean Mullan, and I'm here with our guest today, Samuel Marsden. Sam, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Very nice little setup you've got.
Thank you.
In Barcelona.
It's a lot more professional than usual. Everyone will know that we've been doing this remotely previously, but Sam is actually here in person, as is Joan, our social media manager. Hello, Joan.
Hey, so happy to be with you guys. Learn some bits about football.
Yes. So you might have seen the tweets we've put out about what Sam does and everything. But Sam, would you just like to start by explaining a bit about what you do, how long you've been doing it, and what's your current role really?
Yeah, so my main current role is correspondent for ESPN, primarily covering, in theory, not all of Spanish football, because we also have someone in Madrid, but entails, other clubs in Barcelona, Catalonia, Valencia, Sevilla, or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, Barcelona gives so much news and so much drama that it's hard to focus on other clubs. So yeah, that's my primary job at the moment. It mainly involves written, lots of stuff for online, also television stuff, flash stuff, because we have the television rights now in the US. So for example, last week at Girona, have to go down, you do the flash shown with Jules Koundé and Xavi and whatnot, which is a nice part of the job. So yeah, TV digital for ESPN. Been doing that now for I would say 6 or 7 years with ESPN. Yeah. I'm coming up to a testimonial in Barcelona. I don't know who gives me a testimonial. I have to organise it myself, I think, because it's not with one employer. But yeah, I'm close to a decade in Barcelona, which has flown by. And yeah, makes you realise that you're getting old.
Thank you for that lovely thought. I think you're from Burnley originally, is that right?
No, my dad is from Burnley.
Oh, okay.
My dad is from Burnley, so I'm a Burnley fan, yeah.
Yeah.
Most people will know, because I talk about...
I
don't talk about loads, actually. I don't go on and on about it. Well, on social media anyway, in WhatsApp groups more. I'm more of a private Burnley fan. I don't like to air it too much. But no, I'm from Cornwall as well.
Okay, Cornwall.
My mum's from Cornwall. I grew up in Cornwall, but also spent time in the Northwest.
Yeah.
My dad moved when I got older and stuff. So yeah, I was living in Manchester before Barcelona.
So how did you how did you first end up going to Spain and getting into the job? Was it something that you were invited at, working already and then transitioned over, or what was the story there?
Yeah, so I studied, at the same university as you, I believe.
University of Central Lancashire. Shout out UCLan.
So studied journalism there. And then from there, I was living in Manchester for a couple of years, doing bits and pieces of freelance sort of journalism work. Not loads and loads of stuff. It was quite a difficult time. I think it was around 2010 that I graduated. Around then anyway. That was in Manchester, 2011. So I was there for 2 or 3 years, and yeah, it wasn't a great sort of time to be freelance or going into journalism. But doing bits and pieces, and then my girlfriend loved traveling, wanted to go and live away somewhere. At first, she wanted to go to Ecuador. In the end, we settled on Barcelona.
A little bit closer.
Well, the aim was to live somewhere abroad, but also to learn Spanish. Apologies to any Catalan listeners who say, but I've also picked up some Catalan since the birth of my daughter. So I'm not neglecting Catalan, for the record, but Spanish is obviously a much more universal language and very important inside football as well. With the South American players in England, Spanish players, of course. So that was a goal, to come here for a year. Like lots of people say, let's go to Barcelona for a year. And then once you get here, it's very difficult to leave. Especially for me, because once I got here, opportunities opened up, first with Bleacher Report covering Spanish football, then stuff with the Mirror, stuff with Diario Sport, the newspaper here, goal.com. I've basically written everywhere at one point, eventually leading into the opportunity with ESPN. And once you live in Barcelona with the climate, the lifestyle, the food, the football, it's difficult to leave. So yeah.
It wasn't for me. I missed
That's
home.
Almost offensive.
Yeah. I missed home too much. You were braver and took it out more than I did, but we won't go into that. So I know obviously working in a freelance role, things can be very different, but do you have sort of like a typical working week where what's going to be happening in terms of like press conferences and pre and post match, that kind of thing?
You can plan for the week, but it's never as you planned it with Barcelona. But yesterday being the perfect example. So today obviously is Manchester United Barcelona in the Europa League at Camp Nou, huge game. So yesterday was the pre-match news conferences. So I get to the training ground, you know, for Rafinha, Xavi, think, you know, nice little gig, ask Xavi, Rafinha some questions, write up a nice little preview on the Manchester United piece, and then we get this story breaking on Cadena Ser, the radio station here, about payments made by Barcelona to a company linked to former sort of a senior referee who was at the time on the referees committee for you know, for refereeing reports and stuff. It's more of an ethical question than a legal question. And yeah, all of a sudden, all the Xavi stuff is no one really, or my bosses at least, didn't care so much if Xavi wants to say nice things about Marcus Rashford and Erik ten Hag. They want the story on what's this going on with the referees. So yeah, went to Xavi, didn't write anything about Xavi, wrote about. But yeah, back to a normal week. Yeah, I mean, the normal week will be planned around press conferences and games. But yeah, a lot of the stuff with Barca, yesterday being the perfect example, comes from stuff which you can't plan for. Non-football related matters, transfers, you know, things going on at the moment, for example, and this isn't necessarily related to Barcelona at the moment, but with the Dani Alves, obviously case is a difficult one as well, which we also have to cover. You know, we've had the Neymar tax scandals, all sorts of stuff with Lionel Messi. So yeah, no typical week. But what you can always guarantee is that I try and sort of pencil in 1 or 2 days when I think, right, I'll take these 2 days off so I can get things done, so I can spend time with my family. You can always guarantee that things will happen on those days, even if they look like the quiet days at the start of the week. The quiet days are actually the match days, because everyone's focused on the match, and you know the matches here often don't kick off until 9. So that's usually when it's most quiet, not on the days when there's nothing happening because they need to fill the news cycle.
No, I feel it's good that we did this on a match day. I wasn't sure we'd be able to get you in otherwise. But when you mentioned before about like, so were you saying, yeah, going to speak to Xavi and Rafinha, and I guess now it's you, it's just like second nature. But was there a point in the past where you had like a pinch yourself moment where you're like, I'm speaking to Xavi, I'm speaking to one of the greatest footballers of all time, or even if it wasn't him, like another big name in your career where you were like, wow, this is amazing?
It's hard to remember because obviously, you know, you get so used to it and it becomes the day to day. And certainly, I wouldn't say you never lose the nerves, or I don't anyway. There's always nerves when you're going into an interview or a press conference, or asking a press question in a press conference because you're asking it in your second language, or you're doing the interview in your second language. So that creates nerves, however good your level of fluency is, because you know you're worried perhaps about missing certain little things that maybe you wouldn't miss in your native language. And you know there are also nerves because you're speaking to big characters, big personalities. I wouldn't say they're pinch myself moments anymore. I mean, I'm trying to think back of moments with. And, you know, I've had very few moments. I'm not saying with Lionel Messi, they're more sort of mix zone things, or moments where you sort of brush past him, and trying to think if they were like pinch me moments. But no, not really. You come accustomed to it so quickly. I think the most moments that I think of are moments when I was a kid, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if it sounds stupid to say that I wasn't sort of having pinch me moments with big Barca players. But no, definitely nerves. There's definitely nerves. There's definitely sort of that side to it when you're meeting players and stuff, but they're not so much pinch me moments, I think, because you've seen so many players, you've seen them, how they act on a human level. That's kind of, you know, the shield has been taken down for me from most players, I would say.
Yeah, but on a related note, because I know I've seen this on your profile, but you've once played on the pitch at Camp Nou on the same team as
twice.
Okay. So that's even. But
I also just need to say, talking about ethics and legality with Barcelona, I also need to apologise to our old lecturer Charlie Lambert, because I'm sure accepting to play on the Camp Nou pitch is definitely some sort of breach of journalism ethics when it comes to like accepting things and not. I couldn't turn it down. But,
well, yeah. How do you say no to that? But you were on the same team as Rivaldo once, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that. That's amazing. That
was a little tournament that we played at Camp Nou. I think it was summer 2019, perhaps.
Yeah.
And yeah, Rivaldo was involved as an ambassador for Betfred, who were running the games, and yeah, he was on our team. It was amazing. It was amazing. But again, it was kind of like by that point, obviously, sort of had so many interactions. It wasn't sort of like a pinch me moment or anything. And he'd only retired a few years ago. I mean, he was probably about 45 at the time still. But I think he played until he was quite sort of about 41, didn't he? Dropping down the leagues and stuff. But I mean, he clearly was just there for the gig. I mean, you know, a couple of like, he wasn't running or busting a gut. You know, there's a couple of little technical details, but it wasn't like, you know, sometimes you see like charity games and like Ronaldinho was like doing crazy stuff. Yeah. It wasn't really like that. And there's actually a moment and I'm not a great footballer, but there's a video of the game anyway, and I do the moment I always highlight. It's not my goal. I did score, but
make sure you got that in there.
But no, it's I do this pass to Rivaldo, and his touch is off, so that's kind of like my claim to fame. On look at this great pass, and then Rivaldo with this.
Rivaldo let you down,
but no, he was still much better than me. Yeah.
Well, no, I think that's. If he's not going to put the effort in, we shouldn't hand it to him. So.
Well, no, he put the effort in being there, and he didn't need to extend himself too much.
True.
I'm sure he's at an age now where if you didn't warm up properly, you could get injuries and stuff.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Don't take the risk.
When you said he wasn't running that much, like on his last few games at FC Barcelona was already like that was the trend already. So I see that he stuck with that. But after like scoring that bicycle kick goal, 2001, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he can walk as much.
You can retire. You can retire after moments like that.
Yes, right.
They live forever. Yeah.
I'm sure it still upset him when he miscontrolled the pass though from you. I'm sure he would have done.
We should maybe on the next match day, AMA, you can get Rivaldo on and
to explain
get his side of the story.
We can do that if we ever manage to bring Rivaldo. Sam, you're more than welcome to join.
Sam's got words for you. So yeah, I saw that from your Instagram. That was when I saw it, and I also saw you've interviewed Frenkie de Jong in the past, and some other big names on there. What's that like as an experience to be sat down, like one-to-one with a a world famous footballer, and you spoke about nerves before, but again, how do you find it?
Yeah, I mean, those are the best moments, really. Those are, and they're not always the moments that you'll end up being your best work, but some of the interviews with Frenkie de Jong, for example, are sort of 20-25 minute sit downs one-on-one with the camera. I think they're the best moments. Some of the moments you enjoy the most. Obviously, also some of the games that you get to attend. But yeah, someone like Frenkie is good because you get different players. Some players who, for whatever reason, aren't sort of too keen on speaking and they fulfill the media commitments because they have to. Some players who are very guarded and wary of what they say. You get other players who will just say anything. Not say anything, but they say what's on their mind. They won't sort of hold back, which is good, which is nice, which I like. But I also understand why they don't, because it can quickly be taken out of context and whatnot. Whereas Frenkie is quite good at. I don't think he says everything that's on his mind, but he is very to the point. He will be very honest if there is something that he doesn't like about a performance, whether it's his performance, whether it's the team performance. He will say it. He won't hold back. He won't just say, the team was fine, or he will point out and say, look, we need to do better at this and this. So it's always interesting to speak to Frenkie de Jong because he's got a very analytical mind. He is, like I say, I think it's, I don't know if you can stereotype whole nations. I don't know if I'm going to get you into trouble here, but I think Dutch most Dutch people that I know, I mean, more so than most people in my family, so we beat around the bush a little bit more and we won't say things, whereas Dutch people that I know and with Frenkie are much clearer, much more honest, much more sort of concise and happy to sort of explain things, whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons. So yeah, Frenkie is a good player to speak to because he's always got something good to say.
Yeah. Actually, the Dutch community is one of the most active for us in Matchday. We have a user that is very involved with his call LeBron. He goes, just like, guys, you're walking on thin ice right now. From Frenkie, I think it's so interesting how he turned around the narrative this season, right? For FC Barcelona fans, like he was like used as a scapegoat a bit for some of the problems, and this year he managed with his game on the field too.
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the problem was never really with Frenkie de Jong. The problem was finding not a system that suits him, but a system that suits Barcelona, a system that works. If you look, he arrived in 2019. 6 months after he arrived, Ernesto Valverde was sacked. 8 months later, Quique Setién was sacked. Ronald Koeman came in, who was obviously good for Frenkie on a personal level, and he laid some of the foundations for what Xavi's doing, even if there were still a lot of flaws to that Barca side. There were obviously those initial teething problems under Xavi for Frenkie, and then we had the whole saga last summer, which has obviously been brought up again this week naturally with Manchester United visiting. But Frenkie's always been very clear about wanting to stay at Barcelona. I know in some circles there've been reports that perhaps he would have been open, and why would Manchester United have pursued him so aggressively? But from everything that I know, Frenkie de Jong was always desperate to stay at Barcelona. Him and his fiancée are absolutely settled in the city. They love life in the city, and he's still got a lot to achieve at Barcelona because he's not won a league title since he's been here yet because of all the turmoil that it's been. And last summer it looked as if things were finally on the turn. They were investing in the club. Lewandowski came in, Koundé came in. Why would he want to leave when there's finally a figurehead in Xavi? And the most important thing was Xavi coming in was that calm that he brought. which has allowed the progress to sort of follow. Why would he want to leave at that point? And Manchester United have done very well under Ten Hag, but at the time, there were sort of doubts about United. They'd also been up and down over the last few years. So yeah, Frankie had always been very clear. And yeah, the last month, 2 months since the World Cup, perhaps with this midfield four, we're seeing Frankie de Jong at his best, which is great to see, because I think there are a few midfielders as good as him in the world.
Definitely, I totally agree.
On a similar subject, what do you make of the current Barcelona team? Are they on their way back to their best? Is it, or it's like, obviously they're 8 points clear, I think, at the top.
They was, because Real Madrid won last night.
Oh, they did one last night.
Okay,
yeah.
night, yeah.
But yeah, what's your impression of them this season and the work that Xavi is doing there?
Yeah, they're improving. I think sometimes there's, Xavi spoke about last week about young players being in a rush to play more or get minutes or do things. I think there's a rush among fans, and the media are guilty as well, for things to go from, just go from A to B really, really quickly. But, it's a slow process, but Xavi's not going to come in and overnight turn them into, Pep Guardiola's 2009, 2011 Barcelona, which I think some people, if not expected overnight, thought, Xavi's coming in, he's the new Pep, and he's not Pep, he's very different to Pep. Obviously there are similarities because they're both from the Barca school of thinking. But no, Xavi's laid the foundations, like you said, they're 8 points clear now. They're so much more competitive. I think what the great thing about this Barca side is, and listening to opposition managers over the last few weeks that have played Barcelona has been interesting, is how good they are off the ball. How good they are at pressing, how intense they are. Players like Gavi, players like perhaps Rafinha is underrated in this regard, because sometimes he does let himself down in the final third in terms of perhaps final ball or crosses or whatnot. But in terms of what that intensity, that pressing that he brings, you see it from De Jong in the midfield. And it was interesting listening to Quique Setien, the Villarreal manager, obviously the ex-Barca coach, after that Villarreal game at the weekend when Barca won 1-0 again. He was just sort of in awe at how much Barca have improved off the ball. I mean, if you go back to his Barca of, the final years of Messi, Suarez, Rakitic and those sorts of players who were obviously all of them absolute Barca legends. But in those final years, the complaints were Barca had lost some intensity, they'd lost some competitiveness, and that's why they had these problems in Europe when it came to the big games. They could sort of coast through league seasons, but when they really had to step up, they couldn't. So that's what they've regained under Xavi mainly. And that's also a process which has come from, doesn't happen overnight, because it's to do with fitness, it's to do with, you can't, pressing isn't as easy as it sounds. It's not just about chasing after the ball like a headless chicken. It's strategic. Everyone has to be on the same page to not leave gaps everywhere. So it's taken a while to get there, and they're there now. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it manifests itself in these next 3 months, because this is when it really matters. I mean, we've seen under Koeman around this time of the season, in his first season, there was a good run where they went on and won the Copa del Rey. Last season under Xavi, a great run up until that Clásico, and then they fell away a little bit after the international break. Was it in March? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how, especially tonight against Manchester United, an interesting challenge. Obviously, United in good form at the moment, but yeah, then we've got 3 Clásicos coming up, potentially more European games if Barca do progress. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that sort of competitiveness translates into Europe, especially, even though it's only the Europa League, because of their problems with Europe. I mean, we say it's only the Europa League, but they lost to Frankfurt in the quarterfinal last season. So yeah, I think they're on the right track, and I think they look like they're going to win La Liga. They've already won the Supercopa. They're well placed in the Copa del Rey, the Europa League. So yeah, it's a really exciting time. And there's still things to click in the final third. There have been games when they've blown teams away. But what's obviously most impressive about this Barca side is their defensive record in the league. And I've had a bit of, not criticism, but some people have been like, but they're not a defensive team. And it's not that they're a defensive team, but they weren't a defensive team before and they conceded goals. They would have, there was a run last season when, they would literally concede with the first attack. The first attack, Ter Stegen, first shot on goal, and they would concede. So the fact that they're now going to Atletico Madrid and winning 1-0, Villarreal and winning 1-0, and able to hold on, and the famous Spanishism, able to suffer 4 spells in game. I'm not saying they're sitting back for 45 minutes, but there are spells, and it's natural that Villarreal are going to have 10 minutes here, especially when they're at home. Villarreal beat Real Madrid at home in January, so there's going to be spells when they have to suffer, and they're able to do it thanks to players like Araujo. The signing of Koundé, obviously Christensen's doing a great job. Alejandro Balde, left back, they've got a really good back four at the moment.
Sorry, I put you on the spot. Are they going to win La Liga this season?
Yeah, you have to say yes. They've got an 8-point advantage. Real Madrid have got a busy schedule coming up. They've got to face each other in the Copa del Rey. Madrid have got 2 games against Liverpool. Madrid have got injuries as well. They've got Osasuna away this weekend. You know, if Barca throw away this 8-point lead, I mean, look, they've lost one game all season to Real Madrid at that time in October when they had defensive injuries, which is what cost them that Clásico and cost them their place in the Champions League. You'd imagine it's going to take a lot for Real Madrid to turn around. Have they drawn 2 games, Barca, or 3? I don't know. They've only dropped points in 3 or 4 games, so they'd have to drop points, quite a lot. And I guess Real Madrid could come and win at Camp Nou, and that would cut it back to 5. But no, I think Barca will win the league. Yeah.
There you go. Heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. So, we have a live question actually from the community, and I want to put a bit of context. At Matchday we're building a game that there's part of a football manager. Part of like getting cards, making squads, and this winter transfer window has been really defined by Chelsea and and the Premier League power over the other league. So we have FCB Clef 10 asking you what's your opinion on actually the policy of La Liga on the FFPS on the FFP, sorry, the fair play rules, that Javier Tebas is taking more like a hard line.
It's a good,
more like the influence.
Yeah. No, it's a good question, and it's a good issue. And I know it's controversial among Barcelona supporters because they feel that La Liga are working against them, and you can see why when Barca do things and La Liga then tweak the rules. You're not going to think, oh, they're just doing that for no reason. You're going to think, oh, that's because they want to stop our club. And I think there are lots of bad things about La Liga's FFP, but ultimately, I think Tebas is onto something. The problem is it's not multi-league. It's just in Spain, so it hampers the Spanish clubs against, specifically Premier League opposition. I mean, I know there are tighter restrictions in Germany, for example, especially with ownership models and whatnot. But what I think there should be is something similar to La Liga, not as strict as the Liga's rules, where it's changing the rules all the time. And the problem with the Liga's rules is it's good sort of well-meaning in terms of we're doing it based on predicted revenue as much as past revenues. But it's difficult to do predicted revenue because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when there's a pandemic. You don't know when clubs are going to sell players or this and that. And it's obviously it's not just all sort of done on pre-plan. There's an element of your current season's books and the past season. But yeah, I think La Liga should loosen it a little bit, and I think there should be a model maybe even based on La Liga's. I mean, La Liga's is complicated in some ways, but that is implemented across the whole of European football, so that all clubs spend within their means. I mean, the problem is, and this is going into sort of Manchester City territory, you don't want to cap spending so that just the elite clubs can't be caught up. I do understand that argument from City as well, who say, well, look, if you just cap all the spending, how can a club like City ever sort of challenge the established elite? So there needs to be sort of La Liga type rules for me. And I don't have the answers. If I did, I would be on like a UEFA board or something. Some kind of like La Liga style rules that govern European football, which aren't as strict, but also some sort of allowance for, owners to invest within certain limits as well, sort of separate. I don't know how it combines together, but that would be my proposal and for people to go and work on.
It's definitely an interesting take. I feel like it's defining, and right now it's a bit polarizing, as you said, but probably the solution is somehow in the middle, right?
Yeah, there needs to be curbs on what clubs are able to spend annually, but there also needs to be sort of some freedom for them to, at least if they want to, and have the owners to try and break into the established elite, because otherwise you just end up, and this is what, and they're not the best examples because obviously there are lots of debates about Manchester City's and Paris Saint-Germain's models, but without them being able to spend, how do they ever challenge? And you end up with the same big clubs winning everything. Not that it's massively different at the moment, but it's a tricky question. It's a tricky question. And in terms of the league rules, I think they need to be. I like the idea. I think there should be rules in place, but they need to be loosened a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I see that.
If anyone from UEFA is listening, Sam is available.
Ready to join a board if necessary. That's awesome.
So back to tonight's game, Barcelona against Manchester United. How do you see both the game going both tonight and the tie as a whole? Do you think Barca are going through?
I've been saying yes. I mean, I've been speaking to lots of people who have sort of feet in both camps. Andy Mitten is a journalist who lives here, and they can't really call it. A colleague of mine, Samuel Marsden, doesn't have feet in both camps, but he's here in Barcelona, but he's also sort of edging towards Manchester United. I just think that I still think Barca are slightly ahead of Manchester United. I mean, if Manchester United, the Ten Hag sort of run is fairly recent. I mean, the Xavi thing, I know I spoke about the setback last April, but they had that great run up into the Clasico in March when they won 4-0 at Madrid. They did have the little setback, then they reinvested. It feels like the project, is the buzzword, is a little bit further down the line than Manchester United. Obviously, it's hard to say, but they're 8 points clear and United are third, because obviously the leagues are very different. Barca's defensive record is very good. Lewandowski is someone who's not been in the best goal-scoring form perhaps since the World Cup, but you'd expect him to deliver on the big occasions. And regardless of it being the Europa League knockout round, playoff round, Barcelona and Manchester United is a huge match. The atmosphere, I'm expecting it to feel like a big match. Yeah, I'm making Barca slight favourites. I think the games will be famous last words, but I think they will be tight. Because I think both teams won't want to give up too much. Barca games have been quite tight recently. I'm edging I'm just giving maybe 60-40 Barca.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, Joan.
We got more questions from the community, and we're really glad for you guys sharing your questions with Sam. So basically, there's a lot of talk in Barcelona always about the style of play, right? And so CD here at CD's Noise makes an observation about that Xavi shift a bit the style. That he mentions Scaloni as well, that he kind of adapted after the first loss. What's your take on that? Do you think that Barcelona is actually adapting the style just because now they play with 4 midfielders, or it's still in essence the same thing?
I think the essence is always the same thing. I mean, I know it's a big debate, and I know it can, some people criticize if they think it changes too much. But I mean, you also have to evolve with the modern game, which is, I think, the balance that Barca have to strike. I don't think there's a club in the world that is so sort of demanding in terms of the way they play as there is at Barca. I mean, none of the other top clubs have that same sort of demand. I mean, I know City play that way. I know Bayern play that way. But I think Bayern would equally be happy if they sort of had Real Madrid. Ancelotti said we don't have a style because we don't want the style, it's just winning. I think Bayern would kind of be happy with that. I think Barca is a special case. In terms of Xavi and whether I don't think whether they shift from 4 to 3 or not is massively changing the style. If you look back at some of the past Barca teams, obviously if you look at the 2015 with Luis Enrique, even though Messi was on the right, he obviously had freedom to sort of do what he was, and it wasn't like they were playing with 2 fixed wingers. Messi was almost by that stage of his career acting at times, especially with the ball, maybe not so much in terms of work rate without the ball, as sort of a fourth midfielder, if you will, especially because the midfield then with Rakitic was sort of focused on so much sort of hard work. It was I mean, maybe less so at that time because there was still Iniesta, but that was almost Messi would come in and make a 4, and I think we give too much emphasis to formations as well because they're so fluid these days. I mean, we call it we're saying it's sort of a 4 midfield. We spoke to Marc-Andre ter Stegen before this game actually, and he was like, we don't even know what to call the Gavi role. Because I mean, at times he is wide on the left, but also he comes in and it gives space, and with the ball, Balde is effectively the left winger.
Yes.
So it's not that you're playing without width on the left. I think we give too much emphasis to formations. I think there is an element of pragmatism about some of the things Xavi has done, but I think you have to. I think he had to do that. Without that, they wouldn't be where they are today. I mean, they're not a defensive team, but without their defensive record, they've probably dropped more points, and they're not 8 points clear of Real Madrid right now. And that comes from a little bit more pragmatism in terms of guys like Araujo, who traditionally, Araujo is probably one of Barca's best players right now. But I mean, traditionally, people, or not so much traditionally, but in the last 5 years, and even with Araujo when he came through, there were doubts about is he good with the ball or whatnot. But you need him because his recovery pace is so good. He's so strong. He's so good defensively. He's been reading the game well in terms of, against Villarreal. Jeremy Pino must have been sick of the sight of him. The amount of times he nicked the ball away from him or got back when, Pino seemed to be in. It's a different Barca, but I still think the essence is the same. And that is, when you see the goal, that, quick passing, guys like Pedri can interpret the way Barca want to play. Jordi Alba can come into the side and still interpret that. You still have, when fit, obviously he's missing tonight, Sergio Busquets as the pivot, who is very, very Barca-style pivot, and perhaps, more so than any other pivot in the world. You know, Frankie de Jong is kind of a hybrid between the Ajax and the Barca style, and he's had to kind of learn that Barca style a little bit more under Xavi. And Barca style is having the ball, possession, but also creating chances, attacking. It's attacking football at the end of the day, and different people have different interpretations of that. And Barca is still an attacking side.
Definitely. So, you know, at Matchday we have a partnership with FIFA, right? And we launched our first game for FIFA World Cup. I was very excited. It was a prediction game. We're gonna do later iterations. We're working on that with the community. So all of you guys listening, make sure to join us on Discord. You can find out on our bio. Make suggestions on that. But I wanted to ask you, as a journalist in Barcelona, how did you leave the World Cup? Were you working on it? Did you focus on specific national team, or did you just enjoy it, focus on I don't know, supporting?
Yeah, no, I didn't go to Qatar because it was in such a small place. We didn't send such a big team because so many people could do so many things. Accommodation was tighter and whatnot. We didn't have the rights, so we didn't send too many people. So I was working from home, from here in Barcelona. I did a couple of stories, you know, through Spain, through the lens of Spain for ESPN at the time. Did one on Ansu Fati, obviously being named in the squad, even though he didn't go on to have the impact and have him. Not a difficult season, but an interesting season at the moment. But that was an interesting piece to do, you know, just the standard sort of, oh, look, this is a young player who plays for Spain and Barcelona. Look how good he was as a youngster. We spoke to the young coaches and they told us he was amazing when he was 7. He did this and that. But
he still is.
Awesome. But Ansu also is a nice story because, you know, with his dad coming to Europe, leaving him, obviously, you know, Vasseur, and then him coming over with the family when he was 6. It is a nice story as well. But yeah, he was a good footballer at 6 and a good footballer at 16 when he made his Barca debut. So that was a fun story to work on, speaking to some of the people in the Spanish town where he first arrived in Spain. Did some stuff on, I mean, Luis Enrique was a star of the World Cup for me, and I'm a big Luis Enrique fan, and I loved his twitches.
How awesome.
And we did a big piece on, you know, what we've learned about Luis Enrique's twitches, just talking about some of the more off the cuff things he spoke about, you know, about food and diet and different things. So that was fun. So yeah, I didn't do too much work on the World Cup. I was mainly paying attention to Spain.